The waiter didn't lower his voice. He didn't hesitate. He just smiled politely and asked the question like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. "Excuse me," he said, looking between me and Andrew, then down at his tablet. "Will your pregnant wife be joining you tonight, or should we begin service?" For a split second, the rooftop went silent in a way I'd never experienced before. Not loud silence. Worse. The kind where every sound sharpens. Glass clinks. Wind against the railing. Someone's laugh dying halfway through a breath. I felt Andrew's arm stiffen against mine. Pregnant wife. I turned slowly, not because I needed time to think, but because my body refused to rush the moment. Andrew didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the table, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. The waiter glanced up again, confused now. "Sir?" I smiled at him. Not the tight kind. The calm kind. The kind that surprises people. "I'm sorry," I said evenly. "Could you repeat that?" Behind us, someone whispered, "Did he just say pregnant?" Andrew swallowed. Loudly. The waiter cleared his throat. "The reservation notes indicate 2 arrivals. One already checked in earlier this evening. The other, your pregnant wife." The word landed again, harder this time. Andrew finally looked at me, eyes wide, warning flashing across his face. Not fear for me. Fear for himself. "Hey," he said quickly, reaching for my wrist. "Let's talk about this somewhere else." I pulled my hand back. Somewhere behind us, a phone camera lifted. Then another. I nodded at the waiter. "Who checked in earlier?" He hesitated. "A woman. She said she was Mrs. Hale." The rooftop felt like it tilted. Manhattan glittered behind us, fireworks waiting to go off, champagne flutes sweating in people's hands. This was supposed to be the night Andrew toasted to another year of blessings. He'd rehearsed that line in the mirror. I looked at him. "How pregnant?" He opened his mouth, closed it. That was answer enough. A woman I barely recognized from Andrew's office stood frozen near the bar, eyes flicking between us. Someone else murmured my name. I felt it ripple, the realization spreading faster than sound. "You told people?" I asked. Andrew lowered his voice. "Morgan, please, not here." I laughed once, short, sharp. It startled even me. "Not here?" I repeated. "You told the staff. You told your co-workers. You let a stranger walk up to me and announce it to a rooftop full of witnesses. But this? This is not here?" The waiter stepped back, mortified. I waved him off gently. This wasn't his fault. He was just following instructions someone else had written. Andrew tried again, softer now. "She was supposed to come later. You weren't meant to find out like this." I tilted my head. "Like this?" My voice didn't shake. That's the part people would remember later. Not tears, not screaming. Control. "You mean at a New Year's Eve party," I said, "surrounded by your colleagues, neighbors, and friends, while the skyline lights up behind us and your secret finally runs out of places to hide?" Someone gasped. I heard my heart for the first time then, steady and slow, like it had already made peace with what was happening. "How long?" I asked. Andrew looked around, calculating. Always calculating. "Please," he said again. "Let's just go home." I shook my head. "Answer the question." He exhaled. 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of late nights. 8 months of new passwords. 8 months of me defending him to my sister, to my daughter, to myself. I nodded once. My hands felt light, like they no longer belonged to me. And the baby? His eyes dropped. That was it. No more questions needed. I reached for my clutch and slid my wedding ring off my finger. It made a soft sound when I placed it on the table. Barely audible, but somehow everyone heard it. "I hope she enjoys the fireworks," I said. Andrew grabbed for me again. "Morgan, don't do this." I leaned in close enough that only he could hear me. My voice stayed low, calm, exact. "You did this." Then I turned and walked away. No running, no drama, Just heels against stone, past faces that couldn't decide whether to look at me or pretend not to. The elevator doors closed behind me, sealing in the hum of stunned voices above. In the lobby, I finally breathed. Outside, the cold hit my face and grounded me. The city was alive. Horns, laughter, countdowns already starting. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching couples hurry past, arms linked, unaware of how fragile everything really was. My phone buzzed. Andrew. I didn't answer. I opened my rideshare app instead, fingers steady. As the car pulled up, fireworks exploded above the river, cheers echoing down the street. A new year beginning for everyone else. Inside the car, I looked out at the blur of lights and made a decision so clear it felt inevitable. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to compete with a woman who had already lost by choosing him. I was going to end this cleanly. And before the night was over, I was going to make one call, the kind that doesn't raise its voice, doesn't announce itself, but changes everything. Andrew had made his choice. Now it was my turn. I met Andrew when I was 22, and tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I was finishing grad school, working part-time, carrying the quiet pressure of being the responsible one in my family. He noticed me because I wasn't loud. He said that like it was a compliment. He was ambitious even then. Polished. The kind of man who knew how to speak in full sentences and make promises sound reasonable. He talked about the future early, not in a romantic way, but in a practical one. Stability. Growth. Building something solid. I believed him because I wanted to believe in something steady. We married fast. Faster than my mother liked. She worried I was bending myself around his plans, but Andrew always framed it as teamwork. When he took the better job offer, I adjusted. When his hours stretched, I filled the gaps. When our daughter was born, I stepped back from my career without being asked, because someone had to be the constant. Andrew thanked me for it, often, publicly. He loved telling people how lucky he was to have a wife who held everything together. What he didn't say was that holding everything together meant holding myself back. The townhouse in Jersey City came years later. We couldn't afford it on his salary alone, not then. My mother had passed the year before, leaving me an inheritance she'd built slowly over a lifetime of restraint. I used part of it as the down payment. Andrew called it an investment in our future. He said we'd protect it, that my contribution would always be recognized. I believed him again. The years blurred into routine. School drop-offs, late meetings, business trips that multiplied as his title grew. Andrew became someone who lived on his phone, always half-present, always distracted. He stopped asking about my day. I noticed, but I told myself marriages changed. People evolved. This was normal. The first warning sign came quietly. A password change. He laughed it off, said compliance rules were stricter at work now. Then came the gym membership he never seemed to use. The sudden interest in clothes he'd never cared about before. A new cologne that wasn't meant for me. I noticed everything. I just chose not to name it. Our daughter did, though. She was 12 when she started asking why Dad was never home for dinner anymore. Why he missed her recital. Why he smiled at his phone in a way he didn't smile at us. "Is he mad at us?" she asked one night. I told her no. I told her adults got busy. I told her what I needed to hear myself. There were nights I lay awake waiting for Andrew's car to pull into the driveway, rehearsing conversations I never had the courage to start. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. I didn't want to unravel something I'd spent years holding together. The second warning sign came 6 months before the party. A credit card alert for a restaurant I didn't recognize. Expensive, romantic. He said it was a client dinner. I checked the calendar. It was a Saturday. I let it go. By then, Andrew had mastered a version of reality where everything inconvenient had an explanation, and I had mastered the skill of accepting them. It was easier than admitting the truth, that I had built my life around a man who was slowly removing himself from it. The night after the New Year's Eve party, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the house silent, and replayed every moment I'd dismissed, every instinct I'd talked myself out of. The clarity was brutal. Once you stop protecting someone, the past rearranges itself. The confirmation came the next morning. My phone rang just after 9. It was Nora, my closest friend, the one person who had never fully bought Andrew's act. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't need to. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I hoped you'd never have to hear this from me." I didn't interrupt. "He's been talking about the baby at work," she continued. "Not openly, but enough. Everyone assumed you knew. He let them think that." I closed my eyes. "How long?" I asked. "She's 6 months along," Nora said. "He's been setting things up, apartment, schedule, plans. Plans. Not a mistake, not a lapse, a parallel life." I thanked her and hung up. Then I walked down the hallway to my daughter's room and watched her sleep for a moment longer than necessary. The stakes crystallized right there. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about the example set in silence, about what I would allow to be normalized in her world. Andrew hadn't just lied to me. He'd gambled with our future, my inheritance, and my child's sense of what love was supposed to look like. And now that I saw it clearly, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to protect him anymore. I didn't wake up angry the next morning. I woke up focused. Anger burns fast and burns sloppy. What I felt was colder than that. Clearer. The kind of clarity that comes when denial finally runs out of places to hide. I stood in the shower longer than usual, not because I needed warmth, but because I needed stillness. I let the water run while I sorted facts from feelings. Feelings could wait. Facts were urgent. Andrew hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He'd exposed our finances, our home, and our daughter to risk. He'd made decisions that could ripple for years if I didn't move first. So I moved. The first thing I did was open my laptop and pull every document I could find. Bank statements, mortgage papers, trust records tied to my inheritance. I downloaded everything and saved copies to a secure drive Andrew didn't know existed. I didn't rush. I didn't miss anything. Years of being the organized one finally paid off. Next, I made the call I'd already decided on the night before. The attorney answered on the second ring. I'd helped her once, years ago, when she was starting her practice. A favor returned quietly. "I need to protect assets and custody," I said. "Today." She didn't ask for details. She didn't offer sympathy. She told me exactly what to do and what not to do. I wrote it all down. By noon, the joint accounts were frozen. Not emptied. Frozen. Enough to stop Andrew from moving money. Not enough to raise alarms yet. The credit cards tied to my name were shut down. The ones tied to his would follow. At 12:47 p.m., my phone lit up. "Andrew," I let it ring. At 12:52, a text. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I didn't reply. Instead, I called a realtor, not a friend of a friend, a professional who understood discretion and speed. I told her I might be listing a townhouse and needed a valuation immediately. "You're early," she said lightly. "I'm right on time," I replied. While she scheduled a walkthrough, I went room by room, photographing everything. Not sentimentally, strategically. Evidence of condition. Evidence of contribution. Proof that this home wasn't something Andrew had built alone. At 3 o'clock, I changed the passwords to every account that mattered. Cloud storage, utilities, insurance, the places people forget until it's too late. I set alerts so I'd know the moment Andrew tried to access anything. Then I called my sister and asked her to pick up my daughter from school. "Just for today," I said. She didn't ask why. She heard it in my voice. Andrew's reaction arrived faster than I expected. At 4:11 p.m., his card declined at a gas station. He left me a voicemail this time, voice tight, forced calm cracking around the edges. "Morgan, something's wrong. My card isn't working. Did you do something?" "Yes. but I didn't say it. By evening, the messages piled up. Apologies wrapped in confusion, confusion turning into irritation, irritation sharpening into accusation. You're overreacting. This doesn't have to be ugly. Think about our daughter. I read every word without responding. Each message confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't panicking because he'd hurt me. He was panicking because control was slipping. At 7, he showed up at the house. I didn't open the door. I watched through the camera as he stood on the porch, coat still on, hair disheveled for the first time I could remember. He knocked once, then again, harder. "Morgan," he called. "We need to talk, now." I spoke through the intercom, my voice steady. "This isn't a conversation." He stared at the door, stunned. "You can't do this." "I already am." There was a pause, a recalculation. I saw the moment he realized this wasn't a fight he could smooth over. "What do you want?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because while he was standing there begging for access, my attorney was filing motions. The realtor was preparing comps. The accounts were locked. The timeline was already moving without him. Andrew stayed on the porch for 10 more minutes, pacing, checking his phone, calling someone I couldn't hear. Then he left. I didn't feel relief when his car disappeared down the street. I felt momentum. The night before, I'd walked out of a party humiliated and exposed. Now, less than 24 hours later, Andrew was the one locked out, confused, and scrambling to catch up to a plan he hadn't seen coming. And I was just getting started. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces, small enough at first that Andrew probably thought he could still contain it. By morning, the bank alerts had done their job. He couldn't move money, couldn't reshuffle accounts, couldn't quietly prepare an escape plan the way he'd prepared everything else. I knew because my phone kept lighting up with attempted access notifications, the digital equivalent of someone rattling a locked door. He called again, then emailed, then sent a message that tried to sound reasonable. "Let's be adults about this. We can figure it out without lawyers." That was the moment I knew I was ahead. When someone who had spent months lying suddenly wanted calm and cooperation, it meant pressure was building where he couldn't see it. The first real consequence hit him at work. Andrew's job depended on perception, trust, clean optics, the kind of environment where rumors mattered more than facts. He'd always managed his image carefully, keeping his personal life neatly framed as stable and respectable. That frame cracked fast. Someone at the party had talked. Someone always did. By midday, he was pulled into a meeting he hadn't scheduled. His phone stopped buzzing for nearly 2 hours, an unusual silence that told me everything. When it started again, the tone had changed. "People are asking questions. This is affecting my reputation. You need to tell them this isn't what it looks like." I almost smiled at that one, as if betrayal had angles, as if pregnancy came with plausible deniability. While Andrew tried to control damage at work, the other woman felt the shift in a more immediate way. The apartment he'd helped her secure was tied to accounts he no longer controlled. Rent bounced, calls went unanswered. Whatever promises he'd made about stability and timing suddenly looked thin without access to money. She reached out to him, then to someone else, then to no one at all. I didn't need updates. I could see the pattern. People who enter a situation through secrecy rarely stay when reality shows up unannounced. The social circle reacted next. Friends who had once texted Andrew regularly went quiet. Invitations stalled. Group chats changed tone. A few people reached out to me, cautiously, respectfully, not to ask questions, but to offer support. They didn't say his name. They didn't need to. My family didn't hesitate. My sister cleared her schedule without explanation. My brother offered to be present for anything legal or logistical. No debates. No second chances offered on my behalf. Andrew had always assumed goodwill would cushion consequences. He underestimated how quickly loyalty realigns when truth surfaces. The hardest shift came with my daughter. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't cry. She just looked at me one night while brushing her teeth and said, "So that's why he wasn't around." It wasn't accusation, it was understanding. I told her what she needed to know and nothing more. That adults sometimes make choices that hurt other people. That none of this was her fault. That she was safe. She nodded and went back to brushing, but something had settled behind her eyes. A quiet awareness. I made a promise to myself right then that whatever else happened, she would never watch me accept less than respect again. Andrew tried one more angle. He showed up at my sister's house unannounced, hoping proximity would soften me. It didn't. She didn't let him in. She didn't raise her voice. She simply told him he wasn't welcome and closed the door. That rejection landed harder than any argument could have. By the end of the week, Andrew was unraveling. Not dramatically. Subtly. Missed calls. Poor decisions. The confidence he used to wear so easily now slipping in public. He sent one final message late Friday night. Please. I just need to talk to you. I can fix this. I read it once, then put my phone face down on the table. He was still trying to fix the story. I was already changing the ending. And for the first time since the party, Andrew understood something he hadn't planned for at all. This wasn't blowing over. The invitation came through a mutual friend who didn't know where things stood, or pretended not to. A charity brunch downtown, one Andrew had committed to months earlier. Board members, donors, familiar faces from his professional circle. The kind of event built on appearances and polite conversation. I accepted without hesitation. Andrew didn't expect that. He assumed I'd disappear, that silence meant retreat. He was wrong. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Late enough for the room to be settled. Late enough for Andrew to think he was safe. The restaurant buzzed with low conversation and clinking glasses, sunlight pouring in through tall windows. White tablecloths, place cards, a stage at the front waiting for speeches. Andrew sat near the center, shoulders squared, trying to look composed. The woman beside him wasn't pregnant, not visibly. She was dressed carefully, nervously, eyes scanning the room like she was bracing for impact. She looked younger than I expected. Not naive, just unprepared. Andrew noticed me the moment I walked in. His face drained of color so fast I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I didn't sit. I didn't rush. I walked straight to the table. "Hi," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the polite noise just enough to draw attention. "Sorry to interrupt." Conversations paused. Heads turned. Andrew stood up halfway. "Morgan, this isn't the time." I looked at the woman beside him. "You must be the one he's been planning a future with." Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Andrew reached for her hand. She didn't take it. "I didn't know he was still married," she said quickly, voice tight. I nodded. He was. That was all it took. The room went still. Not silent, but alert. I turned back to Andrew. "You told people I wouldn't show," I said. "You told them this would all be handled quietly." He lowered his voice. "Please, we can talk later." "No," I said. "Later is how we got here." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the window raised their phone just slightly, pretending to check a message. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I stated facts. "You used my inheritance to secure loans," I said. "You maintained 2 households without disclosure. You let people believe your wife approved of your choices. And you stood next to me at a New Year's Eve party while another woman carried your child." The woman beside him pushed her chair back. "I didn't sign up for this," she said, standing. Her eyes flicked between us. "You said it was done." Andrew grabbed her wrist. "Wait." She pulled free. "No, I'm done." She walked out without looking back. That was the moment the room tipped. Andrew stood alone at the table, exposed in a way no explanation could fix. A board member cleared his throat. Someone else looked down at their plate. I leaned in just enough that Andrew could hear me. "You don't get to replace me," I said quietly. "You get to answer for me." He whispered, "You're destroying me." I straightened. "No," I said clearly. loud enough for several tables to hear. "I'm just done protecting you." That line traveled faster than I expected. Someone repeated it near the bar. Someone else laughed. Not unkindly, but knowingly. The story was already changing shape, reorganizing itself around the truth instead of Andrew's version. A man from the board stood. "We're going to pause the program," he said carefully. "Andrew, we'll talk later." Later. The word Andrew had relied on his entire life. I picked up my purse. "This isn't revenge," I said, meeting Andrew's eyes one last time. "It's accountability." Then I walked out. By the time I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A text from someone I barely knew. "What you said in there. People are talking." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because inside that restaurant, Andrew's story had collapsed in public, without shouting, without spectacle, just truth, delivered calmly, with witnesses who would carry it forward for me. And for the second time, he was humiliated in a room full of people who mattered to him. This time, there was no way to pretend it hadn't happened. Andrew didn't disappear after the brunch. He tried to rebrand. Within 48 hours, the story shifted online in subtle ways. Not posts. Andrew was too careful for that. But whispers. Carefully worded messages. Quiet explanations offered to the right people. He told them we'd been separated for a while, that the pregnancy had been unexpected, but handled responsibly, that emotions were high, and I was having trouble adjusting. It was familiar territory for him. He'd always believed that if he spoke calmly enough, people would accept his version of events. What he didn't know was that calm doesn't survive documentation. The first receipt surfaced through someone else. A mutual acquaintance forwarded me a screenshot Andrew didn't realize still existed. A calendar invite titled Ultrasound, scheduled during what he'd told me was a compliance conference. Time-stamped. Location tagged. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. Nora did. Not maliciously. Just truthfully. She shared it with a small circle of colleagues who had been asking questions, attaching a single line. For anyone confused about the timeline. The confusion evaporated instantly. Then came the messages, screenshots of late-night texts, photos of receipts, overlapping dates. Someone else had kept records too. The kind you keep when you sense you might need proof later. Andrew tried to respond. He sent a long email to a group of senior contacts explaining that private matters were being unfairly weaponized. He framed himself as a man under attack, caught between two women. That narrative lasted exactly 6 hours. By evening, people started disengaging publicly. Likes disappeared. Replies went unanswered. A quiet unfollowing rippled through his network, the digital equivalent of chairs scraping back. The hashtag started as a joke. Someone captioned a screenshot with 2 households, 1 lie. It wasn't cruel, it was accurate, and accuracy spreads. The tag picked up traction inside a very specific bubble. Professionals, donors, board members who cared deeply about integrity and optics. People Andrew had built his reputation around. He called me that night. I answered this time. "You're doing this on purpose," he said, voice strained. "You're letting people destroy me." "I didn't post anything," I replied. "I didn't say a word." "You don't have to," he snapped. "You know how this works." "Yes, I did." "That's what happens when your life runs on secrets," I said. "They don't stay contained." He tried another approach. "Think about our daughter. This will follow her." "She's watching," I said, "and she's learning." Silence. The next morning, the situation escalated beyond social damage. Andrew was asked to step back from a leadership role pending review. Not fired. Not yet, but sidelined. The email was polite, professional, final in tone. He forwarded it to me without comment. I didn't respond. The woman he'd been planning a future with didn't defend him either. Her social presence went dark. She stopped answering his calls. The stability he'd promised her evaporated under scrutiny she hadn't anticipated. By midweek, Andrew's version of events was no longer circulating. It had been replaced by a cleaner one, a timeline, names, dates, evidence, no exaggeration, no embellishment, just enough truth to make denial look ridiculous. I stayed quiet through all of it, not because I was afraid, but because silence was doing more damage than anger ever could. When Andrew showed up at the house again, his posture had changed. Shoulders slumped. Confidence eroded. "You've made your point," he said through the door. "This has gone too far." I spoke calmly. "You haven't seen too far yet." He laughed weakly. "You think this ends well for you?" I opened the door just enough for him to see my face. "It already has," I said. "You just haven't caught up." He stood there for a moment, searching for the version of me he could manipulate. He didn't find her, because the escalation wasn't something I was pushing. It was something he'd triggered the moment he decided to live two lives and assume neither would ever collide. And now, with his credibility dismantled piece by piece, Andrew was finally facing the truth he'd avoided for months. Exposure doesn't feel dramatic when it happens. It feels inevitable. Once the court dates were set, Andrew stopped pretending this could be salvaged. The tone of his messages shifted overnight. No more apologies, no more explanations. Everything went through attorneys, filtered, stripped of emotion, reduced to positions and demands. That's when the full weight of what he'd done finally caught up to him. The financial disclosures were the first blow he couldn't dodge. My attorney laid everything out in a way Andrew hadn't anticipated. Not accusations, just documentation. The inheritance trail, the down payment, the loan guarantees tied to my name, the dates that overlapped perfectly with the beginning of his second life. Andrew's attorney tried to argue intent again, that the money had been used for the family, that we'd discussed risks together. The judge listened patiently, then asked for proof. There was none. Intent doesn't override records. Temporary orders followed quickly. Joint accounts remained frozen. Spending limits were imposed. Every transaction scrutinized. Andrew went from free movement to financial supervision in a matter of weeks. The man who'd once managed budgets and portfolios now needed approval to move his own money. The second household collapsed under legal light. The apartment lease tied to his accounts was flagged, payments failed, utilities were shut off. The woman carrying his child moved back in with her parents, not out of choice, but necessity. Whatever story Andrew had sold her about timing and security disintegrated when his access disappeared. She stopped defending him after that, stopped returning his calls, stopped believing his reassurances. I didn't need updates to know when it happened. I could feel the shift in how people spoke about him, past tense, cautious, detached. Work followed next. The internal review concluded quietly. No scandal, no press, just a closed-door decision that ended his role without ceremony. Andrew was asked to resign for the good of the firm. He lost his title, his authority, his leverage, all the things he'd relied on to move through the world unchallenged. He forwarded the resignation email to me late one night. "I don't know how this happened," he wrote. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "It didn't happen to you," I wrote back. "You built it." That was the last message I sent him directly. His family fractured under the strain. His father called once, voice measured, asking about custody and stability. Not about Andrew, about our daughter. When I explained the arrangements, he thanked me and ended the call. Financial support that Andrew had assumed would be automatic never materialized. His brother stopped responding altogether. His sister sent a polite message wishing me strength during transition. It was neutral language, but it was a choice. Silence can be louder than loyalty. Andrew felt that loss more than the money. He moved again, this time farther out, into a short-term rental that didn't require references or reputation. The kind of place people use when they're waiting for something, or running out of options. Our daughter noticed the difference immediately. She stopped asking when she'd see him next. She stopped setting expectations around his calls. She listened carefully when I told her what the court had decided and nodded like someone absorbing reality, not hoping for revision. "Okay," she said. "That makes sense." That word stayed with me. Sense. This wasn't chaos anymore. It was structure. By the time final disclosures were filed, Andrew's world had narrowed dramatically. Support obligations calculated, assets divided, future income accounted for before it ever reached him. There was no rage left in him at the final meeting, just fatigue. He sat across the table from me, eyes hollow, posture folded inward, a man watching consequences land one at a time with no one left to buffer them. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something steadier than that. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. It was accountability enforced by systems he'd assumed would never touch him. And as the legal machinery finished its work, one truth became unavoidable, not just for Andrew, but for everyone who had once enabled him. You don't lose everything all at once. You lose it when no one is willing to protect you anymore. The meeting wasn't court-ordered. That surprised him. It was my decision. I chose a weekday afternoon, neutral ground, a quiet conference room at my attorney's office that overlooked a parking garage instead of a skyline. No drama, no symbolism, just fluorescent lights and chairs that didn't invite comfort. Andrew arrived early. I saw him through the glass wall before I walked in, hands folded, shoulders rounded, eyes fixed on the table like he was rehearsing something that wouldn't land. He stood when I entered. "Morgan," he said, voice cautious, almost gentle. "Thank you for agreeing to this." I didn't return the greeting. I sat. He waited for permission I didn't give, then sat down slowly, like sudden movements might make this worse. For a moment, neither of us spoke. This was the first time we'd been alone in the same room since the night everything collapsed. No attorneys, no intermediaries. Just the two people who had once promised permanence to each other. Andrew broke first. "I never wanted it to end like this," he said. I nodded once. Not in agreement. In acknowledgement. "I know," I said. "You wanted it to end conveniently." His jaw tightened. "I made mistakes," he said. "I won't deny that. But this has gone so far beyond what I ever imagined." I leaned back in my chair. "You imagined two households," I said calmly. "You imagined a wife who wouldn't ask questions and a future that wouldn't intersect. This is just the part you didn't plan." He exhaled sharply. "I'm asking for one thing, just one." I waited. "Flexibility," he said. "We can adjust the terms, the support schedule, the house. There's room to—" "No," I said. The word landed cleanly. "Final." He stared at me, searching for irritation, anger, softness, anything he could work with. He found none. "You're leaving me with nothing," he said quietly. I met his eyes. "You're confusing loss with consequence." His hands clenched together. "I'm still your daughter's father." "And I've never questioned that," I said. "But being her father doesn't entitle you to my silence." He looked away, then back. I was unhappy. There it was, the justification he'd been saving. "I felt invisible," he continued. "We stopped connecting. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore." I let him finish. I always had. When he stopped, I spoke carefully. "You didn't cheat because you were unhappy," I said. "You cheated because you wanted comfort without accountability." His mouth opened, then closed. "You didn't talk to me," I went on. "You planned around me. You built a life that required me to stay ignorant for it to work." "That's not fair," he said. I tilted my head. "Was it fair to let a waiter announce your betrayal to me in public?" He flinched. "I never meant to hurt you like that." "No," I said. "You just didn't care enough to prevent it." The room went quiet again. The hum of the lights filled the space between us. Andrew leaned forward, desperation slipping through his composure. "I can change," he said. "I'll do whatever it takes. Counseling, transparency, anything." I studied him for a moment. Really looked. He wasn't offering change. He was offering retreat. A way back to familiarity, not integrity. I don't want a changed version of you, I said. I want distance from the man who thought this was acceptable. His voice cracked. You're punishing me. I shook my head. I'm refusing to absorb the cost of your choices. He swallowed hard. So this is it? Yes. After everything? He asked. 15 years? After everything, I said, including the last 8 months. He leaned back, defeated now, anger dissolving into something smaller. I don't recognize you, he said. That's because I stopped shrinking, I replied. Silence. He looked down at his hands. What do you want from me? I stood. I want you to respect the boundaries we've already put in place, I said. I want you to show up for our daughter consistently and honestly, and I want you to stop asking me to make this easier for you. He nodded slowly. And if I don't? I picked up my coat. Then nothing changes, I said, because I no longer need your cooperation to move forward. He stood as well, panic flickering again. Morgan, he said, reaching out instinctively, then stopping himself. Please. I turned at the door. This is the last time we meet like this, I said. No more explanations. No more negotiations. This chapter is closed. He searched my face one final time, hoping for mercy disguised as nostalgia. What he found instead was resolve. I loved you once, I said. That's why this hurts. But I love myself enough now not to stay. I opened the door. As I walked out, I didn't feel victorious. I felt unburdened. Behind me, Andrew stayed in that room, surrounded by the consequences of choices he'd believed would never catch up to him. And for the first time, I didn't look back. A year later, the city feels different. Not quieter, not kinder, just honest. I wake up without bracing myself for disappointment, without checking my phone for messages that might tilt the day. The mornings belong to me now. Coffee still hot when I drink it, windows open, light moving across the floor without interruption. The townhouse sold faster than expected. I took my portion, untouched, exactly where it should have been all along. I downsized on purpose, not out of loss, but intention. Fewer rooms, fewer echoes, a place that feels lived in instead of maintained for appearances. Work changed, too. Not because I reinvented myself overnight, but because I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I accepted a role I'd once passed over because it would have complicated things. It didn't. It clarified them. My daughter grew quieter in the best way. More grounded. She doesn't ask why things happened anymore. She understands that adults don't always tell the truth, but boundaries can. She knows what consistency looks like now. Andrew sees her on the schedule the court set. Sometimes he's on time. Sometimes he isn't. She notices. She doesn't adjust herself around it. Neither do I. I hear things about him occasionally, through mutual contacts who don't realize they're giving updates. A smaller apartment. A job that doesn't carry weight. A life rearranged around limits he never expected to face. He's not a villain in these stories. Just diminished. Reduced to someone reacting instead of directing. The woman he built his second life around isn't mentioned anymore. Whatever future he promised her didn't survive reality. That isn't my concern. It never was. What surprises me most is how little space he occupies in my thoughts now. For months, I assumed healing would feel dramatic. That there would be a moment where I'd know I was over it. There wasn't. It happened quietly. One ordinary day at a time. One decision made without consulting the past. I stopped replaying conversations. Stopped drafting explanations I'd never send. Stopped carrying the weight of something that was never mine to fix. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It shows up when you realize you're no longer negotiating your worth. I don't regret loving him. I regret protecting him after he stopped deserving it. That distinction matters. If I've learned anything, it's this. Betrayal isn't the end of a life. Silence is. And I refused to disappear quietly so someone else could stay comfortable. I didn't rebuild by becoming harder. I rebuilt by becoming clearer. Clear about what I will accept. Clear about what I won't carry. Clear about the example I set for my daughter. Not perfection, but self-respect. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that rooftop party. The waiter. The sentence that cracked everything open. I don't replay it with shame anymore. I see it for what it was. The moment the truth stopped whispering. And once it spoke, I finally listened. Thank you for watching and staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you in any way, click the hype button. It really helps more people find these stories. I'd also love to hear from you, so share your thoughts or your own experiences in the comments. You're not alone, and your voice matters here. If you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. I appreciate you more than you know, and I'll see you in the next